Summer finally feels like it's here with sunny skies, and we have a classic summer doubleheader today featuring the events of not one, but two excellent national sport organizations, Special Olympics Canada and Ultimate Canada. Canada has shown how much they love and support sport with the recent NBA title run of your Toronto Raptors. I think they're having some sort of parade today. Today's presenters have events that provide opportunities to communities of all sizes across Canada to host the nation's best athletes and most inspiring athletes. So how can you bring these events to your area? What is the bid process? What opportunities are on the horizon? That's exactly what we're here to discuss today. So my intro, I'm Stephen Trainor. I'm working on behalf of the CSTA. I'll be overseeing webinar technology, taking your questions, and supporting the presenters. Our speakers today are Blair McIntosh, who's the VP of Sport of Special Olympics Canada and the chair of the CSTA Board of Directors. We also have Terry Lynn Belanger, who's the events manager, director of Ultimate Canada. Blair is one of the most respected and accomplished sport management professionals in our country. For decades, he's served the community through multiple sport games like Ontario and Canada Games, Paralympics, and Special Olympics. He is also the co-author of the CSTA Sport Tourism Planning Template. Terry Lynn is a huge presence in one of the fastest growing sports in the country. She brings a much needed wit and professionalism to an emerging sport and is the person to talk to when you want to talk sport tourism and ultimate events. But before we kick into the broadcast and the webinar, I want to go through a few technology items. So for those of you that are participating for the first time, welcome. You'll notice on the right-hand side of your screen, we have a dashboard on the top right of the screen. In terms of audio, I just need to make sure that everyone is hearing the audio properly. So if you've dialed in on your phone, please ensure that you have entered the audio PIN number, and note that all attendees are muted due to the number of people on the line and to reduce distractions for all. So if you try to speak up right now to get my attention, no one will be able to hear you. If you are using the microphone and speakers on your computer as your audio and you experience any trouble with audio during the webinar, it can most likely be resolved by switching to the telephone audio option. There's also a raise your hand button on the dashboard there, so please raise your hand to show me that your audio is working properly. Awesome, we have lots of hands going up there. Good, everyone can hear. Excellent. And in terms of questions, we really want to hear from you guys, especially when it comes to these events. So type your question in the box near the bottom of your dashboard, and I will let the presenters know we have a question when there is an appropriate time to pause. So if you have a technology-related question or issue, please do bring those forward so I can try and address them right away to ensure you get to fully experience the webinar. I should note that a PDF version of the presentation is provided to you in the dashboard as well that you can download. I will be following up with a video link of this recorded webinar and a copy of the PDF as well. So feel free to download the PDF right now or before you leave the webinar, but it will be sent by email afterwards. Each presenter will be running through their slides of their presentation, so please follow along on your screen. So I just want to put the technology to work. I have a poll question for each sport. We're going to go with Special Olympics Canada, which will be starting first. And I just wanted to ask you guys a quick question about your experience with Special Olympics events. So the poll question is, have you or your organization previously held a Special Olympics event? Yes, no, or unsure. So right now we're collecting we're almost done. We've got 100% that have voted. So I'm going to close the poll. And just to summarize it for our presenters here, 40% said yes, they have, 40% said no, and 20% said they are unsure. So it looks like we've got everything working well. Let's get started. I'm going to pass it over to Blair McIntosh, who's going to kick things off. Blair?
Great. Thanks a lot, Steve, and welcome everyone, and thanks for taking the time to join the webinar. I'm going to start by providing a bit of an overview of Special Olympics Canada, and then I'll talk more specifically about our games bid process, and particularly the 2022 games, our national summer games that are out for bid right now. And in order to not cut into Terry Lynn's time, I'm going to get started right away. So we go to the first slide. Special Olympics Canada's mission is we're dedicated to enriching the lives of Canadians with intellectual disabilities through sport. And just to give a bit of a context to that, there are a number of people that still get confused over the Paralympic and Special Olympic movements. And so just to give you a real definition, the Paralympic movement is really dedicated to people with physical disabilities, while ours are related to people with intellectual disabilities. Under our current structure, we're under a federated model where we have a chapter in each of our provinces and territories, except for Nunavut at this time. So it's very similar to an NSO PSO relationship in terms of the governance. Some things within our governance may vary a little bit different from an NSO PSO relationship, but it's a very similar model. Currently, we have over 47,000 registered participants and over 22,000 volunteers, of which 15,000 are coaches. We have a formal coaching certification program that we're now incorporating. And so, whereas I'm sure with many NSOs, we used to have a lot of parents that would coach our athletes, but in order for us to get our athletes quality coaches, we work through the CAC, but we also have some very specific things to Special Olympics in terms of your qualifications. Each of our chapters run daily programs all across Canada, including our Active Start and Fundamentals program, which gets people started at the age of 2. And then that works all the way from the grassroots of those programs right up to our World Games. Other programs outside of our national games and our national team program include our athlete leadership program, where we train our athletes in things such as public speaking, PowerPoint development, self-confidence. We have a number of practitioners that come in and do that training for our athletes. We have a healthy athletes program, which is part of our national games, which, as I said, are out there for bid. And our healthy athletes program is run solely through Special Olympics Canada, and we financially support that. But we have 7 disciplines that take place at a national games where an athlete can go through screenings in eye exams, happy feet, dental smiles, fitness testing, strong minds. And so just to put it in context, we have healthy athletes at our national games and our world games, and many of our chapters have them at the provincial games. And we can have an athlete go through the 7 stages of an eye exam with professional practitioners there, and at the end of the day have a set of prescription glasses that they'd never had before. So many of our athletes don't have access to the type of healthcare that many others have. So by the end of a set of national or world games, they can come out with a set of new glasses, almost a set of new teeth, and in some cases new shoes as well. So that's a program that we're very proud of, and it's an addition to our national games. We also have national awards and coaching certification. And we just celebrated our 50th year of Special Olympics in Canada, as well as globally across the world. So it's been a big year for us. And before I get into the national games, I just wanted to show a video of our last national games, which took place in Antigonish, Nova Scotia, and it was a summer game. So the fact that we have a summer bid guidelines out there, I thought this would be beneficial for people to see. Okay. So, a little bit about our national games. So our national games have been in place since 1974. We alternate between summer and winter every 2 years. So that video you saw was of our national summer games in Antigonish in 2018. Our 2020 winter games are in Thunder Bay, and then our 2022 summer games are currently up for bid. Each chapter holds provincial territorial games as well, and they're a qualifier to get to our national games. So if you are on the line and you happen to be in one of our provinces or territories, and you're looking at even hosting one of our provincial games, you can certainly talk to our chapter in each of the provinces and territories about that opportunity. Our national games are a qualifier for our world games, which are held every 2 years, also alternating between summer and winter. So our last summer games were 2019 in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. We held those in March, which seemed a little strange because we were summer games in the winter months, but it was because of the heat in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. Our 2021 winter games will be held in Sweden, and our 2023 summer games will be in Berlin. Our games are awarded through a formal bid process, which we started in 2020. So prior to 2020, we ran very similar to a Canada Games cycle where each one of our chapters were in line on a cycle to host our games. Then we started to get a lot of interest in the past number of years from communities that wanted to host our games. And so we took that cycle out of play and put in a formal bid process, which we're now engaged in because there appears to be a huge market for hosting our national games. Currently, we also bring national partners of Special Olympics Canada to the national games in terms of, in some cases, in-kind services, some cases cash, but in many cases, the in-kind services are budget relieving. So we have national partners. Some of our major national partners are Coke, TSN, Tim Hortons, Kia, and Sobeys. We have about 22 in total. Special Olympics Canada Summer Games specifically. So as I said, the games are currently open for bid. I'll get a bit into the timelines on a future slide. We have about 1,500 participants, including athletes, coaches, officials, and mission staff. And in some cases, for some of our athletes, we also have support staff that come with those athletes. The games draw an average of 4,000 to 5,000 family and friends in addition to local spectators. We have a huge following of family and friends, and I'll get into a bit about how we also involve them in our national games as well. Sports for the 22 program include athletics, basketball, bocce, 10-pin bowling, golf, powerlifting, rhythmic gymnastics, soccer, softball, and swimming. And the games budget is approximately $2 million. So sometimes that fluctuates just a little, and it really comes down to where the athlete's village is. So if you're in a university college setting and you can accommodate everybody in that type of setting, sometimes it's a little bit under the $2 million mark, as opposed to if you're going, or sorry, yes, if you're going to a hotel setting, it's usually a little bit more expensive. The bid process and timelines for our 2022 games are currently underway. The bid guidelines can be found on our website as well as the CSTA site. And I know you'll have my contact information after the webinar, so if you'd like me to send you a copy of them directly, I'm happy to do that. Letters of interest were due on June 13th, but just to keep in mind that the letter of interest is simply to let us know how many bids we're going to receive, and it's not required in order to submit a bid. So our actual bids are due on August the 19th. We have a formal bid and site review committee in place. We have an evaluation tool that we go through, and we also do debriefings once the bid process is over for municipalities that may not have been successful and may want to bid on a future games. Site visits will take place the week of September 19th, and then we'll announce our successful host the week of September 22nd. So as you can see, based on those timelines, we award our games almost 3 years in advance. So it gives the host community ample time to be able to not only organize our event, but ample time to secure sponsorship and run fundraising events to help offset the cost. Special considerations and the economic impact of our games. Organizing our event, I would say, is typical of any multi-sport set of games. There's not really too many things that are unique to our Special Olympics games. Our athletes are, go through the same training, go through the same rigorous qualifiers that any other athletes do, and the events themselves run pretty much like any other multi-sport set of games. One of the few rights holders, we are one of the few rights holders who provide the host with an operating grant. I mean, I'll give a shout out to the Ontario government does the same with their Ontario games, but it's not a common thing for a rights holder to provide an operating grant. And I'll get into how much that is and some of the budget items on the next slide. Friends and family is a large part of our games, as I mentioned before. So special consideration should be given to additional accommodations options for family and friends. I think, in some scales, they use the fact that there's 1.2 family members that accompany an athlete in most competitions. Ours is up in the 3.5 to 4 range. And in some cases, I wish I was joking, but some of our athletes bring 30 to 50 family members with them. Our minimum requirements we have minimal requirements for fully accessible accommodations. We have a few athletes who would be in wheelchairs or need accessible rooms, but certainly nothing of the magnitude of a para set of games. We've done a steam on our past 2 games, including the winter and summer. So our winter games, which are a little bit smaller, in 2016, we were in Corner Brook, Newfoundland, and the economic impact was $5.7 million. And then just recently in Antigonish in 2018, Nova Scotia, the impact was $8.7 million on Antigonish, 10.7 in Nova Scotia, and 12.7 across Canada. So you can see the economic impact of our games is fairly substantial, and a big reason for that is, I mentioned before, we have a lot of family and friends that follow our athletes, and in many cases arrive early and stay late. And then we have the healthy athletes component to our games, which is a unique situation as well. And that's normally, if possible, held in a large facility like a field house, or the best possible situation is in a school where there's separate classrooms for each one of our disciplines. Funding and budget. So the average budget, as I said, is approximately $2 million, and that's really dependent on not only the summer. Summer has higher numbers, but in many cases they can get cheaper accommodations, and the venues are a little bit cheaper. When you get into our winter games, we do have skiing, which in some cases can raise the cost. Special Olympics Canada provides an operating grant of $650,000 to the host community. In addition, the host gets to retain all registration fees, which currently bring in about $80,000. And then Special Olympics Canada and each one of our provincial territorial chapters pay all external transportation costs for our participants, which equals about $800,000 to $1 million to get everybody into your community. And then the internal transportation is at the cost of the host. Special Olympics Canada brings, as I said, a number of national partners to the table, and in many cases with budget relieving in-kind contributions. So, as an example, this coming set of games, Coke will donate $20,000 in product. Tim will be donating a number. They haven't figured out the cost yet, but they provide a lot of the volunteer lunches. Sobeys will provide a lot of the nutritional snacks throughout the game. And Kia will provide some of the vehicles. So those are just some of the budget relieving items that our national partners bring. Any surplus from the games is split between the host and Special Olympics Canada, with 70% going back to the host and 30% coming to us. The host is the deficit guarantor, but I think it's important to note that our games have never incurred a deficit. The average surplus from our past 4 national games have been between $200,000 and $400,000. And I think I did miss on one slide. I wanted to, oh no, I think I got it. And I think that's the roll up of our games. I'm happy to take questions now or wait till the end. Steve, whatever you prefer.
I have a couple of questions here. And as I
Okay.
said before, folks, if you have questions, please submit them through the text, the chat function, and I will be sure to pass them on. But thank you very much, Blair, for the presentation. There will be a chance to ask questions later on as well. But the first question I wanted to ask you, Blair, is, so this is, in addition to it being such an inspiring event, as most past hosts have talked about, it also seems like a serious no-brainer for communities across the country. You've got the grants that are available. You've got the huge economic impact. You've got the amount of families that support and attend this event. Can you give us an example of something that a past host, specifically for the summer games, because it's now up for bid, something that they did really well that really helped the games?
Yeah, I mean, I would actually use Nova Scotia and Antigonish. So many of our athletes, because they come from all across the country, many of our athletes have never seen the ocean. And so our host traditionally is responsible for hosting one family and friends event, and it's at a cost to the family and friends, but the host puts that on. And in the case of Nova Scotia, they had a big seafood dinner down by the ocean and on the beach, and so that drew literally every parent and every family member that came to Nova Scotia. They weren't going to miss that opportunity. And again, it was something very unique for our athletes who would never get that opportunity. Even in Corner Brook, Newfoundland, their family and friend event was very directed towards the culture of Newfoundland, and so it was a big seafood buffet within the community. So it's those kind of things that are sort of added bonuses for our athletes, and what really helps draw the family and friends to the events.
Excellent. So I have a question from Sam here, and he's asking if we've hosted in the past, how many years could we be considered to bid again? So I think this comes from someone that's actually hosted the event before
Uh-huh.
on the East Coast and is itching to get the chance to re-host again. So what's your guys' policy on that?
Wow, that's about as good of a sell job as I could get if somebody wants to host again.
Exactly.
um, no, so we don't put a geographic restriction on the bids at all. We basically, we're very open and transparent about what we're looking for, what our evaluation tool looks like, and I can be honest that the bulk of the scoring and the weight comes to the care and comfort of our athletes. Probably not unlike any other national rights holder, where that is the priority. And so, the fact that somebody might have hosted once and then a couple of years later looks to host again, that's not going to hurt their bid in any way.
Okay. Thanks for that question, Sam. One final question before we move over to Terry Lynn. The question is about the fact that you've now been on board for several years, but as these things go, maybe some organizations on the call hosted a while ago before you came on board. Could you point to maybe one thing that Special Olympics does differently with their events now that they didn't do in the past that you think might be attractive to potential hosts?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I would say that our games are bigger, which is great for a host community, and we provide uh, more funding than we have in the past, and we provide different incentives like our national partners that come to the table. In the past, that hasn't always been the case. So, from a financial standpoint, the games are that much stronger, and we have in place now that we never used to have in place before is we have a high performance program that runs in every one of our chapters. So the athlete and the caliber of competition you see is that much greater than it has ever been in the past as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.